Longtime fans of my channel might remember that volcanics are one of my favorite themes in Yu-Gi-Oh! I played them at the 2015 WCQ, and I played them at a whole bunch of regionals. It was just so much fun to play. I really like Scattershot and Blades Accelerator Reload and all those cards. But I haven't really had an opportunity to put them in anything. That was until right now, where we're going to be playing them in frogs. I think with the new ban list, just a lot more decks have the opportunity to be successful. And going by the recent regional and ARG events that happened under the new ban list, while Spirals are still the best deck, they're not tier 0. There's a lot of other rogue decks that were topping events, and I think that's really good for players like me, and I think Volcanics actually fit really well into Frogs, and we'll talk about that as we go along here. So let's get right into it. First, we have 3 copies of Swap Frog. This is the guy where if you open him, you win the game, basically. No, it's not quite that simple, but generally speaking, if you can get to that Swap Frog first turn, you'll probably win. It's just such a good card. 3 Dupe Frog. This is a card that I see a lot more than Swap Frog. Your most common opening in the standard Frog deck is set Dupe Frog, set 4 pass. But Dupe Frog, he has his uses. He's pretty cool. Obviously really good to get off the Totally Awesome. And then 2 Rodent Totem. So that's sort of your standard Frog lineup there. Nothing too fancy. Now we move on to Volcanics. So the normal Volcanic Frog decks you're probably used to seeing just play the 3 Scattershot. I'm going to be playing a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. But Scattershot's really cool for a couple reasons. First of all, frogs have a really tough time getting over big boards. Scattershot takes care of big boards, and also it does damage. And frogs can a lot of times have a really tough time closing out the last like 4,000 damage or the last 3,000 damage. So 1,500 is actually really good. And then it also blows up their field so you can attack directly, which is cool. So a lot of people play this. They play the Blades Accelerator Reload, but I'm actually playing a whole bunch of other stuff. So while this is obviously important, I'm actually going pretty hard here. We're playing 3 Volcanic Shell. This card, while it's in the graveyard, can get another one from the deck, and then you can get your draws with Blaze Accelerator Reload. Drawing in this deck is very powerful. Frogs almost always win in a simplified game state, so if you can, just in general already, but with the draw power of Reload getting you through a ton of different cards, you can usually just get to that simplified game state, or you can just 1-for-1 trade your opponent down to no cards, and then you still have like 6 cards, and you make Totally Awesome and just win the game. So we have the shells there. I'm only playing 2 copies of Rocket. While this card is good, it clogs sometimes. It honestly clogs more than the little Volcanic guys. And you can discard them for the Blaze Accelerator Reload. But in general, this is just like another good normal summon when you don't have the Swap Frog or like a Dupe Frog or something. 1 Royal Firestorm Guards. You never ever want to open this card, so I'm not playing 2. You only want to draw this card after you've resolved Scattershot, basically. And in that case, it's very, very good, and it gives you that extra Scattershot use. Maybe you could test Jar of Avarice. You could probably get away with that card as well, but I like having these 1,700 attack points. For the hand traps, which are very good in this deck because when you're using Blazing Soda Reload and cycling through your shells, you're drawing a whole bunch of cards. So when it's your turn, you obviously want to draw into Swap Frogs and stuff, but when it's your opponent's turn, drawing into hand traps is really good. So we're playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom, obviously like the best hand trap right now, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre, and then just 1 Maxi. I think that a lot of people are just playing these 6 hand traps. You can also play Drone Lockbird if you want to, depending on what tournament you're going to. If I was going to regional, I probably wouldn't main the Drone Lockbird. I would side it. So I think that these are pretty good all-encompassing main deck hand traps. The only spells we have, are Soul Charge and Regeki. I think these cards are good. Regeki is still good even though we have the Scatter Shots. This is like a fast answer to our opponent's board. Soul Charge is kind of risky because we are paying a lot of life points with the shells and the strikes. But man, when you open Soul Charge Swap Frog, it's just really powerful. For the traps, we're playing a full 3 copies of the Blaze Accelerator Reload. In a normal deck, you might just play 1 or 2, or the normal version of Volcanic Paleozoics. But in my deck, I actually want to have a 1 on the field, so I don't mind playing 3. Drawing this card is fine. You can always just activate it, like even if you don't have a Volcanic in hand, just to trigger a Paleozoics. That's pretty good. We have 3 of all the regular Paleozoics here. So the Karma Cut, the Dust Tornado, the Book of Moon guy. So that's fairly straightforward. think everyone knows those cards. And I don't even want to try to pronounce them. 2 copies of Paleozoic Marilla. This is a card that I don't play in the normal Frog Paleozoics because I don't think it does enough, because it just sends another Paleozoic to the grave. And yes, it can send like Lost Wind or Breakthrough Skill, but usually you're just using to send a Paleozoic. But in this deck, you can send the Blaze Accelerator Reload, which means that this card is actually a Regeki on your opponent's turn that also does 1500 damage. Or if you actually need the second Paleozoic engrave, it can do that as well. So I like this card a lot. I'm not playing the one that puts back a banished card. You can maybe get away with that. It puts back the Paleozoics and also puts back Blaze Accelerator Reload. But I think that I just didn't have the room. We're already playing more than 40 cards, so space is kind of tight. 3 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. There's no mistake in this deck anymore. I don't think it's necessary, at least not in this version, because you have so many searching effects. I mean, mistake shuts off the shells, shuts off Rocket, shuts off Dupe Frog, all that kind of stuff. But Anti-Spell is very good, and we only play 2 spells, so it's bound to win some games. And the new Spiral decks play like 100 spells. It's like the whole deck now. It's just a ton of different spell cards. So the Anti-Spell Fragrance is really good at locking them down because, sorry, just still like talk about these for a second. So the new Spiral deck plays like double summons, it plays terraforming. They lost a ton of monsters and they're not really replacing them with anything. They're just playing more spells. So Anti-Spell is actually quite good against them. And it's obviously just an auto win against Pendulums, especially when you can put it next to a Totally Awesome. The other traps are 3 Solemn Strike and 1 Solemn Warning. Now, I do realize that it's pretty much impossible to resolve all 4 of these and the Soul Charge and the Volcanic Shells. Each of these is going to cost you 1,500. You got a 2,000 here. Soul Charge is usually costing you anywhere from 1 to 2,000. The shells themselves are costing you a total of 1,500, and you're going to be taking damage from your opponent's attacks. So I realize you can't resolve all of these things, but the idea is that if you get to a spot where you have access to like all those cards, you're probably winning the game anyway. Shell is really, really good. The things that you're doing here, I'll just kind of show you. If this is one of the reasons why I used to love Volcanics when I played them at the WCQ. With 1 reload and 1 shell, you can cycle through a lot of cards. So when your opponent goes, you reload the first shell and get yourself so I probably can move those up. Get yourself 1 draw, and then on your turn, you use Shell's effect to add the second shell to your hand, use the reload again to pitch the shell and draw a card, and then use that shell to grab a 3rd shell, and then on your opponent's turn, you then discard this shell to draw another card. So when you start with 2 cards, you end with 3 draws, and 3 cards out of, well, 2 cards out of your deck as well, that you don't have to dead draw or whatever. And that's a really good play. So in the course of 2 back and forth turns, you've just drawn 3 cards. Those could be Swap Frogs, those could be a lot of different things, hopefully trap cards. But that's why the shells are really important, because you can just cycle through your cards way faster than a normal frog deck could. Anyway, the extra deck. Obviously, 3 Totally Awesome. This card is totally awesome. It's I hate myself for making the joke. Anyway, this card's very good. You just want to summon this thing as early as possible. If you can summon it first turn going first, you've pretty much won the game. 2 Opabania, 1 of this dude that always just get hit by Strike. These guys, which are basically the same monster, although not quite the same monster to the point where you only have to play 1 of them. They're like pretty close. Obviously, their effects are very similar, but you kind of need to play 1 of each because there are certain situations where 1 of them is better than the other. These last 3 cards don't come up very often, but when they do come up, you really, really need them. Cat, Shark, Daigusto, Phoenix, Sky Cavalry. All of these cards are very good in their own regard. It's just that you're only probably, if you went to a regional qualifier, you'd only probably summon these cards once the whole tournament. But those games where you are summoning these cards, you like actually need them to win the game. Sky Cavalry especially. It sort of is like a kaiju if you can get to the battle phase. It outs things like the Invoked Fusion, the Water Fusion that's like impossible to kill. It outs Denko Sekka, all that kind of stuff. So it's very good. Just getting around big monsters. Daigusto Phoenix can poke for 3,000 damage out of nowhere, and the Cat Shark can do some crazy stuff as well. So you kind of have to play those cards, as much as I hate to say it because I don't make them that often. For the Link monsters, I am playing 2 copies of Miststar Boy, 1 Proxy Dragon, and 1 Decode Talker. I should mention that there are no rank 4s in this extra deck. despite the fact that we do have 3 level 4 monsters, and there is a potential where you draw like Rocket and then Firestorm Guards, and then later on you draw a Soul Charge and you want to make a rank 4. I don't think that's going to happen enough to warrant cutting any of these cards. There aren't really any good cards to cut, so if you really want to do something with them, you just make the Proxy Dragon or the Decode Talker. It's not the best play, it's not the worst play, it's just a play. But a lot of times you just want to leave those cards on the field because they have high attack points, and this deck's goal is really just to scattershot your opponent once and then attack for game, basically, or almost kill them and then summon Toad after using the scattershot so that they can't deal with your board. So that's kind of the win condition. But anyway, that is going to be it for this deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. It was so much fun to break out all of these high rarity Volcanic cards. I do love them. I played them a lot. It's been a while though. So I will see you guys later. Let me know if you have any questions or, I guess, advice on the build. And I will, we'll make another video about this probably, maybe a live commentary or something. I don't know. It's like the only deck that I'm having a ton of fun with in this new format because it's actually like kind of playable. So anyway, I'll see you guys later.